Okay, so I'm going to now extrude along this curve. So this is what I need to do is I need to select my curve. I'm going to go here, select my curve, go over my pumpkin here, right click and say face, and I can choose those faces that I want again like I had done before. And I hold down shift and my my greater than symbol or my period, shift period, grab those. I need that curve, so I selected that curve again. I knew it was right there, so I selected that. And now I can extrude along this path. So I go to mesh. I'm using, I like to use this method versus the modeling toolkit. I'm going to say I don't want to extrude a vertex, I just want to extrude a face. Go to my options box. Now, in the reset settings, now right now I'm not sure how many divisions I want, so I'm going to say apply. And what it's going to do is it's just going to jump one giant chunk to the end of that curve. But if I go over here in my inputs and I go down into the setting for division, and I right click or I select that, and then I middle mouse over here, I can divide that up into as many smaller segments as I want. And I can also taper it down a little bit. So I'm going to select taper, middle mouse, and I can scale that down a little bit. And so that gives me a little bit of a pumpkin top here. And if I like that, I can be happy with it. If it's too much, it's a little big to me, but for now I think, when I smooth, if I hit number 3, if I go into my smooth proxy mode, it doesn't look too bad. I can work with it for the basics. And you can always go back, and if I wanted to take an edge and grab the edge around the base of my pumpkin here, I could scale that down. I might grab this edge and use my soft selection tool. Soft selection by double clicking here, double clicking on my tools, and go down and use soft select. And what soft select does is it allows me to choose a portion of my model, for instance just this edge here, and based on the influence it has around the model, based on its fall off radius and how I have it set, if I change something at this point, it will change with a pretty good degree of influence around the whatever this color says. So the hottest points has the highest influence here, but it does have influence on parts of the model in other areas. So if I wanted to scale down, say, this portion a little bit more, I could do that and grab this and scale it down. And I kind of have the ability to scale down the other parts. Okay. Now I don't want this to be happening, this edge here. So I'm actually going to turn this off, and I'm going to use my select and use my scale tool to square that off again. Use my move tool to move that in the world axis back down. And this one too, I don't want this to be too cockeyed here, so I'm going to move it down a little bit more. And I'm just watching and looking at my objects here and making sure things look okay, and that I don't have any problems. And if I smooth this, it looks like everything looks pretty good. Now I'm keeping this really general because in the end I want to do most of the pushing and pulling and the deforming of the model using Mudbox. So essentially what I have, so if you wanted to make a hollow hole in the back, like my example has a hole in the back, so I could put a light or some sort of thing in there. If I wanted to do that, I'd simply just remove the faces in the back here and that would be fine. But you'd have to know how big it needed to be, obviously. For this pumpkin, I'm not necessarily doing that, but I certainly could. That way I could put a candle or something in there. Being my first pumpkin, I want to keep it as simple as I can, and then learn from that, and then make other versions of varying degrees of complexity. More holes, more things added to it, and that sort of thing before I learn. I don't want to make something too complicated in the beginning because I'm not sure what my printer is going to be able to do and that sort of thing. So I want it to be very simple right now. Okay, so if I'm happy with that, that's the point at which I'm going to stop modeling in Maya. I'm going to save this as my pumpkin add stem model. Save. And then I'm going to select the model. I'm going to go to object mode, and I'm going to select it, and I'm going to export it out as an OBJ file. Now, if you don't have, by default, the OBJ export isn't necessarily an option for you, so you have to go into Windows, and you have to go into Settings and Preferences, and then down to Plugin Manager. And it's in alphabetical order. OBJ, let's see, it's down in OBJ export.mll. So make sure you have that checked. Okay. If it's checked, then you can go to have your object selected, go to File, File Export, Selection. I'm going to go to the options box here, and I'm choosing the file type of OBJ export. Notice that there's a lot of other kinds of things that you can export, but I'm choosing OBJ export right there. And currently, this is all I'm worried about using. I'm going to say export selection. It's going to ask me for a name. This is where I will make a new folder for my OBJ files. OBJ, and I'm going to go into that, and I'm going to call this my pumpkin. Well, it's a jack-o'-lantern, but you can call it whatever you want. Jack-o'-lantern version 1.3 or whatever, but this is my OBJ version. And so I'm going to have that, and I'm going to put a .obj on there just in case, because sometimes Maya doesn't do that for me. And I'm going to say export selection. And when I'm done, I should be able to go into my projects folder, and it should be in there. So I'll see if I can find it here. jackolantern3dprint, scenes, OBJ, and there's my jack-o'-lantern file. Okay. Now, if I've done everything properly, I should be able to now go into Mudbox and work with that file. And so I'm going to begin that part of a video in a separate, so as it'll carry on. So this is the end of the polygonal modeling section. But just in case, I'll go ahead and yeah, I'll stop here, but if I have to go back to Maya, I might have to. So be aware that if you've made a mistake or you've got errors in your mesh, you'll have to go back to Maya, fix it, and you bring it into Mudbox. You may have to go back and forth until you get your model right. So this will be the end of the Maya modeling portion.